purpose of this demonstration is to walk through approval or denial of 1959 eligibility in the 1959 web system. I'm going to share my screen of our 1959 web system, but it will actually just be in a test environment. So the names in this will look a little bit different than what you'll see on your end. Again, as this is a testing system. So after logging into the web system, you'll see here the system will default to the Applications tab in the left-hand column. And you'll see all the applications entered in the system. You'll see all these different application ID numbers. Each time a new application or a case is created in the system, there will be a new application ID created. You can filter the application IDs to find a specific number. If you select the down arrow next to application ID, you can sort A to Z or Z to A, and it will sort the numbers. You can also filter by the member name if you're looking to find a specific person. Again, if you select the drop down, you can sort A to Z or Z to A, and it will sort by last name. You'll see all the A's are combined and so on. You'll also see there are tabs for the Medicaid ID, Spaces Client ID, the 1959 start date, 1959 end date, our status reason, which would be the status of the application and the date it was created on. So all these are ways you can filter and sort to find a case that you were looking for. To create a new member, go to the New tab at the top of your screen, and a new screen will open, your new application screen. The system will not let you create the same member multiple times. You'll get a warning if someone has already been created in the system. When you click in the member box, you'll see an option to add a new contact. Click Add New Contact and a new screen will pop up with required fields that need to be filled in. The red asterisks marked next to each field are all required fields and must be filled in. If something is missed, you'll receive an error message. And all the information for the contacts will be found on the SFN 741 1959 eligibility application. For purposes of this demo, I'm just going to create a fake name. If you don't have a middle name on the application, you can see that's not a required field, so just tab through. Date of birth is obviously required. You can type it in or use the calendar. It will give you an option to select a date. Social Security number. You'll get this from Spaces. The Social Security number will not be actually on the 1959 eligibility application. You'll have to go to Spaces to find that information. And that will be the same for your Spaces client ID. You'll have to pull that from Spaces as well. Medicaid ID number will always start with ND. And this should be found on the application. You'll get down to is on Medicaid. One of the eligibility criteria for the 1959 is you have to be on Medicaid, either traditional or expansion, to be eligible for the 1959. If this individual is on Medicaid and that has been verified in Spaces, leave the checkbox clicked. If they are not on Medicaid, unselect this box, and you will see that some of the required fields are no longer required. And we ask that you fill in the information that is provided to you on the 1959 eligibility application. But for this purpose, we're going to say this individual is on Medicaid, and that has been verified. I see it's taken out my information, so I'm going to go back and type it back in. And again, I'm just making up numbers as we're going through just a quick demo. Address line. You are able to put homeless in this line if an address is not, if an individual may be homeless. But otherwise, please add in the address found on the application. The city and state is the two-letter abbreviation. When we scroll down, you'll see there's options for home phone, cell, work, and email. None of these fields are required, but we do ask that you fill them in. If they're on the application, it gives the program more of an opportunity to have different means to reach these individuals. And we'll get down to the parent legal guardian section. If this is filled in on the eligibility application, please be sure that the contact info is also filled in the web system. Again, these fields are not required, but they must be filled in for a member who cannot act on their own behalf, as eligibility letters and notices will be addressed to the parent legal guardian rather than the member. And if the parent legal guardian has a different address, you can go in and fill that out. Otherwise, there is an option that the address is the same as the member. If you select that, it will autofill. And again, we have contact information, home, cell, work, and email of the parent legal guardian. Again, we ask that you fill that in if that information is provided to you on the eligibility application. Or you can just mark home, cell, same as member, but in this instance, this individual didn't have a home number. So we'll say a cell is. And you'll get down to an alternate contact. Again, if this information is provided on the eligibility application, please fill this in. Again, these fields are not required, but this is just another source for program to reach out to try to get in contact with an individual if we're not able to reach them. They may or may not provide their address, but again, you can see these fields are not required. But if you do have that information, please fill it in, as well as their home, cell, work, or email. I'll go ahead and hit save and close. There it went. And if a required field is left blank in the contact information and you click save, you will receive an error message if a required field is not filled in. So as we've saved and closed, you will see now our new member has been created. But you'll also notice that the application ID, modified on, and modified by are all blank. They will automatically populate once you hit save. So we'll go up to the top and we'll click save. You will now see you have an application ID number. It shows you the date it was modified on, the date and the time, and who it was modified by. So now that we've created our member, let's run through approving and denying eligibility based on the criteria. Just a little note here, the system will not let you enter Medicaid dates unless you have already saved. And so we have a little note here, saving is required before entering. If you're unable to enter new dates, you must click save first. So for this purpose of this demo, we're going to say this individual is on traditional Medicaid, and this has been verified in Spaces. And to do so, you will just click Add New Traditional Medicaid Dates. And you can type them in freehand or click on the calendar. And we'll just say this was their Medicaid started on February 1st. And the end date, you will get this date from Spaces. If they don't happen to have an end date, the system will allow you to use 12/31/9999. So we will hit save and close. And you'll see here in our traditional Medicaid eligibility dates, we've now entered them. And just a reminder that applicants must be on Medicaid to be eligible for the 1915I. If they are not on Medicaid, the individual is denied eligibility and the Medicaid dates are obviously just left blank. If you would need to edit, if you review this and you made a typo, to edit the entry, just click this little circle and an edit button is going to appear. If you click the edit button, it will open this screen where you're able to make changes and then just save and close. If you need to delete an entry entirely, maybe you enter traditional dates when in fact they should be expansion dates. You would just click the 3 vertical lines here, or excuse me, you would click your range and click your 3 vertical lines, and then you're going to have a delete option, and you'd be able to delete that entry. So we'll keep scrolling down. The next section is Medicaid expansion. And as this individual is on traditional, we're going to leave this blank. But this is just another section. If they were on expansion, the eligibility dates would be entered here in this section, just the same as we did for traditional dates. The next section here is your federal poverty level. It must be at or below 150% to be eligible for the 1915I. And you will assess the poverty level from the member's income that's identified in Spaces. There is a 1915I federal poverty level table on our 1915I website to reference when making this determination. So for this purpose of this demo, we're going to say this individual did meet the federal poverty level. You have no, yes, or undetermined options, but we're going to select yes. And again, if this member would not be at 150% or below, eligibility is denied. In that case, you would just select no. Our next section is our diagnosis section, and we want to add all applicable diagnoses in this area. Again, these diagnoses are identified on the eligibility application. So to do so, we're going to click Add New Diagnosis. And a new screen will populate. And if we look down at our options here, we have no qualifying diagnosis, primary, secondary, and tertiary. If an applicant wouldn't have an actual qualifying diagnosis, we would select no qualifying diagnosis. And if you did so, all the required fields go away and you can just save and close. But for purposes of this, we'll say there is a diagnosis listed on the eligibility application. And you will enter the diagnosis code identified on the actual application. You're able to type in the code here. Just trying to find one, here we go. Or you can hit search and it will give you the listing of them. They've all been entered in the system already for you. Do not add a new diagnosis. They're already all in the system for your reference. So you can either type it in or search for the code. The diagnosis date is also identified on the eligibility application. And you'll see here your modified on and modified by are blank. Again, once we save, up at the top, they will populate. It'll populate your date and your time and by whom. So we'll save and close. And if we scroll down to the diagnosis section, you will now see that our diagnosis has been entered. And you can keep repeating this process if there are second, third diagnosis identified on the eligibility application. You can just enter them in the order that they're found on the application. If you would need to edit this for some reason, select the entry and you'll get an edit button. Or if you hit the three dots, I guess there is no delete option. You would have to use deactivate if you would need to delete it. So scrolling down, we get to our HUDAS score. This should be identified on the eligibility application as well. If it's not assessed, there is an option to put, just leave this blank. But we do ask that if there is no HUDAS assessed, the zones reach out and schedule a HUDAS assessment with the individual. We'll just say that this individual scored 30. An individual score has to be at least 25 or higher to qualify for 1959 eligibility. If the score is not 25 or higher, eligibility has been denied. Our next field is member rights. The zone is to inform the individual of their rights, appeals, and hearing options, as well as choice of service providers. This form is found on the 1959 website. And once it's been provided to the applicant, you can select yes. And the next field is our care coordinator provider list. If and only if eligibility is approved, the zone will provide a list of enrolled 1959 care coordination agencies to the individual. This list is found on our 1959 website. Please do not print it. This list is continuously changing as we get providers enrolled in our program. So the most recent version will be found on our website. If eligibility is denied, select no, as this step is not required. But we're going to say yes, this list has been provided to the individual because they have met all eligibility criteria. Our next section is our status. And you'll see we have approved, closed, denied, and pending. Pending, we will use this status if we're waiting on some information before eligibility can be determined. You can use approved if all eligibility criteria has been met. Denied will be used if eligibility criteria has not been met. And I just want to note, no changes can be made to an application once denied is saved. You have to change the status back to pending if you want to make changes to the case. And closed would be used when 1959 eligibility has been running and for some reason they no longer meet the criteria and the case has to close. Again, no changes can be made to the application once the closed status has been saved. If you need to make some changes after you've saved a closed case, you'll have to put that status back to pending. And just for demonstration, I'm going to show you if you select denied, you're going to get a reason here that's required. It's a required field. If we select there, you're going to get various reasons of why you're denying an eligibility application. So we ask that you select every applicable reason. There is an option to select other. And if you do so, a free text field will populate and you can identify why eligibility is denied. But for purposes of this, we're going to say eligibility is approved. Save here. And you'll see I have 3 notifications because I haven't completely saved. Let's see. I don't know why I can't. This is sticking here. Well, the last section is our 1959 eligibility dates. I wish I could show you these here. We do have a start date, and over here there'll be an end date, and you'll see a review date. The start date, per policy, it says the start date is the first of the month, the zone signed and dated receipt of the completed application. That was our old policy. New policy is the start date is the day the zone determines 1959 eligibility. So today is the 3rd. We would start eligibility today, as that's the date we determine eligibility. The end date is over here. If the 1959 start date is less than 6 months before their Medicaid eligibility date, then the date will be 364 days from the 1959 start date. If the 1959 start date is 6 months or more before their Medicaid eligibility date, then the applicant's Medicaid eligibility date is also the 1959 end date. This is all written in our 1959 eligibility policy for your reference. So please just reference that if you have any questions. On your 1959 end date will be this, your review date will be the same as the end date. It just has to be entered twice for the system to pull right. You must be approved for eligibility before entering 1959 eligibility dates. Obviously, if you're denied eligibility, these dates will be left blank. So when all information is entered and the status is selected, right here you can hit save. And I'm just not able to get past this reason here. I don't know how to do that. There we go, finally let me. So we'll just say our start date, and we're gonna push it out for a year. And again, your review date will be the same as your end date. Let's hit save and see if we get any error messages. There. So our last section here is your notes and attachment section. You can add a new note anytime there is contact with the client. You simply just click add, or you can just type it in. You can enter a note here. We'll say test. You can add in any language. You can hit the little paper clip and add an attachment, and then click add note. And it will save it under this notes and attachments section. The last step here is to populate the approval or denial letter. And these are all, the templates are in the system, and to find them, you hit the three little dots here up at the top. And you're gonna go to Word Templates. And you're gonna see options for an approval, closure, or denial letter. Since in this case, we're approving eligibility, we'll open the file. Move this to the side. We'll hit Enable Editing. And our letter will populate with the date. And you'll notice here it's addressed to the parent legal guardian rather than the actual member. And this is approval of eligibility. If you scroll down, there's a few fill-in spots for the zone. You'll enter their current number, their household size, and their income, and then you will sign it. And you can save the actual letter and upload it into FileNet under short name 88. And that concludes the demonstration of approving and denying 1959 eligibility.